video is on the federal areas. Okay, so I want you to look at this state, okay, the outline of the state, the entire Texas territory. This is Texas territory, okay? This is not called state of Texas. This is Texas territory, which is the whole, what was before the Constitution, the nation of Texas, or the Republic of Texas. This whole territory is part of America. Now, when the United States were formed, the whole territory of Texas gave some areas, like here, 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 here. Some of these areas it gave up to the United States, which is the federal government, for the erection of forts, arsenals, magazines, etc. Not all of these areas were given up at the time of a ratification of the Constitution by the territory of Texas. All of these federal areas that were given up are collectively called State of Texas, and there were contracts between the territory of Texas and the federal government for administering these areas inside the territory of Texas. So in administering the federal lands inside the territory of Texas. Now these are called federal territories or territories of the United States. Okay, now they added to that later on because they were able to purchase lands, which Texas, they say, never sold lands. And according to the GSA manuals, which is the General Services Administration, which keeps track of all the federal lands, Texas did not sell, but I think perhaps 2.5 acres of land to the United States. The rest of it leases or rents. But these are the lands where they would put, the parks, the national parks, national forest, national fish and wildlife, and then the Department of Defense and the Bureau of Reclamation. Okay, so these federal territories put together, are called State of Texas. And I'm going to show you a congressional record where they talk about the Congress creating something called State of Texas. This is from 1867, the Congressional Globe, page 1565. I do not know if this was the first session or the second session, but if you go to the Library of Congress and search Mr. Cowan or legal state, then some of these papers will pop up, and then you can search through the 1867 year and find this, because it's there, and that's where I got this. I got this from LOC, the Library of Congress. Now this is Mr. Cowan speaking. And he's asking the president, what is a legal state government? Is it a government cooked up for a state here in Congress, or is it a government of the people of the state make for themselves? Because when you look at just the territory of Texas, which includes the federal lands, you're looking at something that the settlers who first moved here created a government for themselves to administer their lands and their system of government that they wanted. So Texas is a territory which is under a specific system of government to which the settlers, or also called inhabitants, create for themselves. Now the federal areas are under a legal state. So what the settlers create for the territory of Texas is called a lawful government. Okay, it's directly coming from the people. Now these federal areas, federal territories, the Congress makes up are a legal state. All things legal are fiction. I have an entire video devoted to what legal means, and legal means fiction or artificial. Could be a corporation, could be a joint stock company, could be an individual or a class of people. Okay, and then I show you the Texas birth certificate application for the creation of a legal entity in the state of Texas, which are the federal areas, claiming to be a citizen of the United States. These federal areas, along with the federal areas in all the other states, are called the United States. And the people on those territories are called United States citizens. So if you're a settler or an inhabitant of the territory of Texas and you're claiming to be a United States citizen, you're doing it wrong. You should be claiming to be an American citizen, because these are the American territories. And in the Constitution, in the preamble, we see that it says the federal government, and then all these things. Basically what it's saying is the federal government works for the United States of America. So these areas work for these areas. These people work for these people. These citizens, federal citizens, called citizens of the United States, work for American citizens. Okay? These people work for these people. And we can get more proof of that in Article 2 for the president, where it says, this guy, the executive power shall be vested in the President of the United States of America, and this guy, the President shall be the Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy of the United States. So the President is over this area, and the President is over this area. When he's over this area, he's the executive of the United States of America. When he's over these areas, he's Commander-in-Chief of the land and naval forces and the militia. Where else do we see the areas? Okay, District of Columbia and places purchased is where the federal government has exclusive legislation. So they legislate for these areas exclusively, meaning this area cannot tell them what to do when they make laws for these areas. So when they sold these areas or leased them out or whatever, these people said that they would not interfere with what goes on here in these places so that the work could be done. That's what it's saying, to exercise exclusive legislation over the District of Columbia, which is the seat of government, and the places purchased. Okay, now it actually didn't include Bureau of Reclamation, Fish and Wildlife, Forest Service, National Parks. It doesn't actually include those. It includes only these areas. Exclusive legislation in these areas, which are for defense, which are military posts. And how do we know that? Well, the government told us, because it says also here, the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful buildings. And one of the things that they do for us is this, defense. Defense with a C, not an S. I have a video on that if you'd like to watch it. And this is not misspelled. You change the C to an S in English when you're adding certain suffixes onto this word. This word defense does not exist just by itself, not in the old dictionaries. Maybe in the new ones they changed it, but then the defense with an S is actually not the word. It's defense with a C that's the word. This is the correct spelling. And this word goes along with tranquility, welfare, liberty, blessings, and posterity. They go together. If you change this to an S, then this cannot occur, this cannot occur, this cannot occur, this cannot occur, this cannot occur. All of these words would change. They wouldn't go together with this word if it was an S. These words go together with this word because it's a C, because of the meaning of the word. Okay, let's look here. This is one of these jurisdictions, but not this jurisdiction. This Department of Defense is number 1. That's the code, 1. So areas of any territory of America belonging to the federal government used for defense with a C comes under Code 1, exclusive legislative jurisdiction. I showed you that. It's in the Constitution. Exclusive legislation over the district, places purchased, and this defense with a C. Okay, and who's in charge of these areas to make the laws? Congress. So when they say they're going to pass gun laws, they can't actually pass gun laws, first of all. And second of all, if they do, they can only pass them for the areas that they purchase and have jurisdiction over. They don't have jurisdiction, any jurisdiction whatsoever over these areas, the American territories or the American citizens. They only have jurisdiction, any at all jurisdiction over these areas. Now, when it comes to like the purple areas or blue, whatever you want to call it, these are the Department of Defense areas. These are the areas that they have exclusive, Fort Hood. So they have exclusive, meaning the state can't interfere. But when it comes to like the yellow one, what is yellow? Darn it, computer. Fish and Wildlife Services. Okay, so Fish and Wildlife Services. That would be like here, Fish and Wildlife. What kind of power do they have over these areas? Let's look. Not exclusive because they're not used for defense. They weren't purchased for defense purposes, so it has to be either 2, 3, 4, or 5. Because it depends on the contract that the federal government has with the state to control these areas. So they could be concurrent, meaning the state and the federal government. Partial, meaning the federal government was given some jurisdiction, but not half and half. Or proprietorial, meaning that they were given jurisdiction such as a regular Joe landowner. And unknown, meaning each state may have said, well, I'll give you jurisdiction to drive on it and use the roads, but that's it and nothing else. So you can make some laws for your people when they're driving on our roads, and that's it. Okay? All right. So this website doesn't come up anymore when I use it. Now, I don't know, maybe you can get on this website, but when I try to look it up on my computer, I can't get to it. It says the server is not there. Can't access the server or whatever. but I've noticed that I cannot get on a lot of websites, but then other people can. So if you can get on this website, I suggest you go and you pick out your state and you download the map. If I had been smart, I would have went ahead and downloaded the maps for all the states, and then I would have had them and I could have just shared them, but I didn't think ahead on this one. Okay, so I want to show you one other thing. It may take me a minute to pull it up because I have to find it amongst all these papers here. Here's a quote from Patrick Henry that I just received from someone. So I'm going to see if I can find this other paper. It's a good paper. And it talks about how they wanted to say in a certain paper, American citizens of the United States, and they had an argument in Congress about it because there's no such thing as an American citizen of the United States. You have Americans, and then you have citizens of the United States. Okay, now I've talked about this paper quite a bit. Another one that someone sent me, and it's from the Congressional Globe, printing the congressional speeches and talks and stuff. This is the official proceedings of Congress published by John C. Rives, Washington, D.C., 33rd Congress, First Session, Wednesday, May 3rd, 1854, page 67. It says new series number 67. And all these highlights are American citizen of the United States, American citizen, that every white male American citizen of the United States or who has declared his intention to become such. Okay, so this is the way it worked back in that day. If you wanted to become a federal citizen, meaning you wanted to work for the federal government, you had to go to the state court of record and apply. Once you applied and were approved, you left your citizenship of the United States, you left your citizenship of the state and became a federal citizen. Once you became a federal citizen, you were no longer a citizen of this territory, of the state territory. So once you became a citizen of this territory, you were a federal citizen, and they called them citizen of the United States. They were not allowed to come off and use services in this territory because they were no longer taxpayers in this territory. They were only taxpayers in this territory. Let's say this one because this is a military reservation. Originally, they were intended to be people on the military reservations. So you could be a clerk and work as a clerk for 2 years on a military post as a civilian. After 2 years, you could apply for citizenship in the state court because you were still a state citizen, but you were working on post as a civilian. If you had good behavior, you could apply in a court of record to become a citizen of the United States. You became a citizen of the United States, which made you a federal citizen, but you were no longer a state citizen, you were only a federal citizen. So everything that you received was a benefit because you now paid federal taxes on your federal income. So after some time, they realized that this was not working because the people on here did not have schools, hospitals, insane asylums, and various other services that they needed, but they couldn't go off post to use them because they weren't they weren't state taxpayers. So the federal government created the legal state, the one in the congressional record from 1867 that I mentioned to you. They created a legal state, which is a state on paper, so that this area could be paid for these people coming off and using the services, because these people sued in a local court and lost. They sued in a state court and lost, and so they sued in the Supreme Court and lost. So the only other alternative was a contract between them and them, for them to use these and then pay taxes. And that's what happened, and that's why they became also citizens of the state and the federal government. And that was the creation of the legal state. So he's asking, Mr. Cowan's asking the president, what's a legal state? Is it a government cooked up for a state here in Congress, or is it a government that the people of the state make for themselves? So yes, there's like two governments inside the territory of Texas, one for these people and one for us, one for the citizens of the United States and one for American citizens. So we go here. And we see that this is a problem, because Mr. Howe is trying to get a bill passed, but he says that white male American citizens of the United States is wrong, because there are no American citizens of the United States. You're either an American citizen or a citizen of the United States. And it says laughter. I don't know if the people in Congress are laughing at him, or if he's laughing, because he's laughing that somebody wrote white male American citizens of the United States. Now, I want to point out very quickly as a side point that even though it says white, and I disagree that there should be racism in any government, that's not what I'm talking about here. Okay, so yes, white should have and was marked out, but I want to point to the fact that it was the word American that they put here, because you can't be an American citizen who's on this area and be on these areas, because that would be an American citizen of the United States, and they're like opposites. It doesn't work. American citizens are the free people over all the territory, not under federal government control, not federal taxpayers. And then there are these people who are federal citizens, but also citizens of the state. But citizens of the American citizens are not also federal citizens, because we're not on federal lands. If you try to get on Fort Hood and you just say, well, I just want to go on there, they're going to turn your car around and tell you to leave, because you're not a federal citizen, unless, of course, you get permission. And even then, you're considered a guest. Okay, so this is actually several pages long. I only have the first page here. It's, I don't know, about 5 or 8 pages long, where they go through and they talk about this. And he's right. So they strike out white, which of course it never should have been there. Leave in male, strike out American, and leave in citizens of the United States. So it's male citizens of the United States is what they end up with. Okay, because there is no such thing as American citizens of the United States, because Americans are not federal citizens. Okay, so that's what I have for you today in this short video on what's the difference using a map to help you understand. And I don't know where you can go to get state maps that have the federal areas in them anymore, since, like I said, they have taken this nationalatlas.gov website. It appears as though they've taken it down. I read something that it had expired. I don't know what that means. This is from the U.S. Department of the Interior, U.S. Geological Survey. So I don't know if you can go into some other website that someone knows of that I am unaware of and find these that have the federal areas laid out. But if you can, shoot me a link in the comments section. I'd appreciate it. And like, share, subscribe. please consider sharing. If you can't do the other two, just at least share it. I've been kicked off most social media sites, and I'm constantly being quieted by YouTube, where I have a video where they take down all my comments, even the ones that just really don't say anything at all. They just delete them. And I have a video of them doing that in real time. So you can check that video out, as well as some of my other videos. And again, like, share, subscribe. We need to get the word out to people and help them understand that the government is telling you they don't own you, they have nothing to do with you, and you keep claiming to be a citizen of the United States. And you don't have to. Okay, you guys have a great day and good luck.